Supervive just finished their most recent beta test, and the game is finally out of NDA hell, which means I can make a video about it. What's poppin' everyone, it's your boy Levi, and if you've been around my channel for a while, you'll have heard me talk about a game called Project Loki. Quick disclaimer, I am not in the Supervive creator program. This video isn't sponsored by them. Everything here is just my own genuine opinions about the game. Much like Eternal Return, Project Loki, now renamed to Supervive, blends the genres of a MOBA combat in a battle royale setting. Theorycraft Games, the developers of Supervive, all have previous experience working on games like League of Legends, Valorant, Overwatch, Apex, and more, and have combined their talents in an Infinity Gauntlet style to create Supervive. I did mention that recently this game has just been out of a beta playtest, but the game has been in development for quite a while. While I'm by no means part of the first wave of players playtesting this game, Supervive has been in development for almost 2 years at this point. Long-term Eternal Return fans will know what it feels like to play a game in early access for years. You clicked on this video because you wanted to know why you would like Supervive as an Eternal Return player, so let's get into some comparisons, because I promise it's more than just the genre. Like I said, I'm not a long-term player of this game, so this will be info from the most recent playtest. Supervive is currently a Western game having an NA server and an EU server. While I'm sure the plans to expand, it's a breath of fresh air to know that our gameplay experience is being prioritized. While I do think Nimble Neuron works very hard on Eternal Return, it's hard to not feel forgotten sometimes. Bug fixes in ER only tend to happen if Korea gets the bug too, and seasonal dev streams are no longer in English and are solely relied on the community to create. Different from Eternal Return, the main squads mode for Supervive is teams of 4 rather than 3. There's a plethora of characters to choose from, a lot of which are carries, there's a few controllers, and a few supports, which I've found myself gravitating towards. The gameplay in the background is a video of myself on the character Zeph, a playmaking support. I've also been trying out the character Aluna, an Enchantress healer support. If you guys want a more in-depth video on the characters, let me know in the comments. Supervive also has 2 other queues. One is Arena, which is like a King of the Hill type of game mode. I honestly haven't tried it yet, but I would love for it to be a solos mode rather than team. I'm still begging for a solos battle royale MOBA ever since Eternal Return 1.0. They also have a duos mode, which is decently popular. I know a lot of Eternal Return fans wish ER had went the direction of duos instead of squads, so if you're one of those people, you might find some comfort here. One of the major reasons why I transitioned from League of Legends to Eternal Return was the game times. When you get shit on in Eternal Return, it's quick, and you can move on to the next game. I was tired of playing 40 to 50 minute league games just to throw and lose, or get slow burned on a game that wasn't winnable. Supervive also fits that narrative. I managed to pick up a few wins during the playtest, and the longest one I think was no longer than 15 minutes. I'm sure in the higher elos, games tend to go a little longer, but it was never anything exhausting. On the starting side, Supervive gets to the action much quicker than Eternal Return. If you hate the looting and crafting phase of getting your build done each game before you can actually play the game, Supervive skips all that. After selecting your drop, you're pretty much into the action immediately. While there's definitely some strategy to focus on the creep camp you land on, Supervive's version of hunts, to get level 2, if you drop on the same area as another team, you'll likely be fighting right away, and you can get eliminated right away. I've genuinely had games last under 20 seconds because we drop slightly slower than another team. Some characters have AoE abilities that they can get level 1, which can decimate a team. While getting wiped can be frustrating, I would say the barrier to entry is much easier than Eternal Return. Look, as much as they simplified ER over the years, it's still one of the most complicated games out there to learn. If you've managed to get the hang of ER, you can borderline play any MOBA. One thing that I like with Supervive is even though every character has different abilities, they mechanically all work the same. Here's what I mean by that. Every character has a left click. This pretty much is your basic attack. Some characters can charge it, some characters have rapid fire, but it's more or less always the same type of basic attack. Your right click is your first ability, and usually reflects your class. A lot of carries have high damaging abilities here, the supports have a heal or some type of CC, and the controllers have utility. The next ability is your left shift, which for every character is some type of mobility. Whether it's a dash, a jump, a leap, an air dash, it's some kind of mobility tool. You then have an E, which is similar to your right click ability, reflecting your class. And then the ultimate, which you're familiar if you played any MOBA before. You also get 2 powers, which work the same as your tactical skill from Eternal Return. They basically do a thing when pressed, or they have a passive ability. You will have to find these around the map. You don't typically start with anything. You also have equipment slots for gear, and item slots to hold items and food. I'm not going to go too into depth with the core mechanics of this game. If these Supervive videos do well, maybe I'll make a beginner's guide. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss that. The hardest mechanical part about Supervive is that it's WASD controls. If you're familiar with the controls of Overwatch, and more specifically Omega Strikers, it translates a bit from that. Combat mechanics are all basically the same though. If you have knowledge of how you should position and when to use your spells in Eternal Return, that translates over well. With everyone having the same type of abilities per button, it means that you can look out for things easier. And what I mean by this is even if you don't know what the character you're fighting against does, if you see them dive with a big dash or a big jump, you can probably infer that it's their shift mobility, and know that they won't have that to escape for a little bit. There's not many characters in this game that have infinite dashes, so to speak. I'm looking at you do Ronin. One of the best things about getting into Eternal Return for me was that I got into the game during Season 1 of Early Access. The game was still developing, hadn't undergone any major changes yet, and there wasn't a lot of characters I had to learn. I highly recommend trying to get into Supervive the next time there's a playtest. Theorycraft Games usually announce on their Twitter and their Discord when they do playtests, and if you watch streamers playing the game, they'll have a chance to get a drop for a key. You'll often see a bunch of recognizable names in the playtest, as a lot of Eternal Return creators that you know were alpha testers for the game. I know I mentioned that at the start of this video I wasn't a long-term player of this game, but I did participate in one of the early tests with Sixella and Tabi. One of the biggest reasons I think Eternal Return guides have done well on my channel is because I started as a bronze player myself, and then I climbed my way to Titan. No shade to a lot of the top players that make guides, but I find that a lot of top players who have always been top players that make guides sometimes forget the little things that can be tougher for newer players. If you want to learn as I learn, and hopefully learn at the same pace I do, hopefully you'll stick around. I really recommend giving Supervive a try. Hopefully this channel can be a place where we learn the game together. I'm still working on a few more Supervive videos for this month, but don't worry, this isn't a full pivot. I have some bigger Eternal Return videos in the work. If you watched to the end of this video and found yourself thinking that you're more a fan of me rather than just Eternal Return, I highly recommend that you try out my other channels. I do more than just Eternal Return videos. I play single-player story-based games like The Coffin of Andy and Lele, and do anime reactions to shows like Freerun and Spice and Wolf. Click or tap the screen now to be taken to those channels if that interests you. Hopefully, I'll see you there.